Nice shoes. Victor. Benji.
Woo! Benji, take your shirt off. What? You're all thinking it.
My story is confusing. Some guys like guys. Some guys like girls. Some guys like both. I'm not even sure what I like.
You just made Mia Brooks blush.
Mia is not just some girl. Everyone is obsessed with her. Even the bathroom graffiti about her is respectful.
All right. Not as respectful as this show. Our show is the most successful, respectful, impactful. I can come up with another rhyme. I've got this. Doggone it. Welcome to Cordkillers.
Like he said, welcome to Cordkillers, the show about making statements that you immediately regret. I'm Tom Merritt.
I'm Brian. We've got that was a clip from the upcoming Netflix original series, Brian?
The upcoming Hulu series.
Original.
Love Victor. We reported this was going to be a Disney Plus series, but it's been moved over to Hulu. This is a spinoff of the 2018 rom-com Love, Simon. It's got a new character in the center of it, Victor, who's figuring out his sexuality and how to deal with the family and high school and all that stuff. And he contacts the original Simon from the movie. That's coming to Hulu June 19th.
You know what's, before we bring in our main guest, it's really fascinating to me how universal, like watching that 20 years ago, that trailer would have been remarkable because it was about somebody discovering whether or not they were same-sex, bi, whatever. It's extraordinary to me how universal, oh, no, I get it. You're just in that teenage phase where you're trying to figure out what you're up to. I remember that. Yeah. I'm surprised at how, and I mean this in a good way, how boring that is to me now. It's teenagers figuring out teenage stuff.
I will say
how the story is just a love story, right?
Yes, correct.
I will say Love, Simon is a very cute movie. It's kind of boring. So
hey, we agree. 2 out of 3 panelists agree that it's boring. But now we're going to bring on our main guest, Lamarr Wilson. Thank you so much for coming back, man. So good to see you again.
Great to be here. Thank you so much, Brian. Appreciate it.
All right, man. Should we just jump right in on the primary target?
Yeah, Lamarr, you ready for the primary target?
Yeah, are you ready? Oh, no, I'm sorry, Bryce. Bryce, are you ready? There's a primary. There's one target. It's very primary.
I think I'm ready for it. Here we go.
Okay.
Oh, I wasn't ready for it.
Duck on it.
AT&T confirmed to The Verge that its HBO Max streaming service will not count against AT&T Mobile's traditional data caps, or even those kind of invented soft data caps that you have when your plan is called unlimited, but at a certain point it slows down a lot. It won't count against any of that. Competing services like Netflix and Disney Plus will. A Verge source says HBO Max is using AT&T's sponsored data system, which technically lets any company pay to excuse its services from data caps, which would mean that internally, since AT&T owns both AT&T and HBO Max, that Warner Media records an expense and AT&T Mobile records revenue. But on the bottom line for the whole company, it comes out a wash. When The Verge investigated in February 2018, only AT&T's own DirecTV, Uverse, and Fullscreen. They own all 3 of those. Only those 3 were using sponsored data service when The Verge looked into it. If you go to AT&T's sponsored data page, they list a partner named Aquato as using it. Aquato is a marketing company that gives customers more data to use in exchange for viewing ads. So Lamarr, I saw you clapping a little bit there. Do you like that AT&T is 0 rating its own service here?
Yeah, I'm terrible. I'm a terrible person. I just want everybody to know that. So I have AT&T, so I'm very biased, and I'm like, I love HBO Max, so I'm like, bring it on and give it to me free. I don't want no downloads. I don't really use the other ones. So again, this is very, very biased. I applaud it for this reason, but I know there's some other small little net neutrality issues.
Talk about, we were just talking about that Love Victor moment, how different that would look 20 years ago. 20 years ago, this very idea would be a hot button issue. The question of is it okay to give preferential bandwidth treatment to your own content or whatever? But in an age where 5G is rolling out and we're about to have Starlink out there or whatever. I feel like this is a lot of phoning in. We know we need to say these words to make the very increasingly few people who are worried about hitting their bandwidth caps comfortable with watching all of this stuff. It looks like you and I might not be aligned on this, Tom.
Well, I'm questioning that there are few people worried about hitting their bandwidth caps on mobile.
Viewers, and keep in mind,
on mobile with 5G coming, that's going to make you hit it faster. So I'm not quite following your logic.
Will there be data bandwidth caps in 5G?
There will be.
Okay. So, man, do me a favor.
I mean, if you're, I don't think the 5G Starlink thing really bears on this. If you're saying like bandwidth caps are on their way out, then okay. Although I don't quite see the evidence of that. So
let me give two threads. First of all, Peter Diamandis' book, Bold, says that if you want to start a tech company, go ahead and assume certain things are, if they're trending towards free, just assume they're free to build your company around it. Google was based around the idea that as storage became closer to free, like, let's just pretend it's free today and then build a business that is ready for, a time when storage is pretty much free, which is pretty much where we are. Same thing for communications technologies or whatever. 10 years ago, people we're having full-on fist fights about net neutrality, and there's only so much internet to go around, and I need this and give me those. The volume has been turned down on that so much. And keep in mind, as we transmit this, we are transmitting part of it on one broadband service, also transmitting and receiving on another broadband service with a third one in the wings ready to go. On top of that, more options are coming up every single day. I just got a notice today from AT&T that, hey man, just to let you know, you almost hit your cap. And when we say almost, we mean you got 75% of the way there this month. But if you ever cross it, just know that everything will stay the same, but if we feel like it, we might slow you down if things get real busy. So in that world, all of that is to say, my headspace is not really feeling any power behind this grandiose announcement that video usage will not count against bandwidth caps.
Well, it's not very grandiose. The Verge had to go dig it up. So, I think you might be overselling it.
Sorry. And I think that's what I was trying to prod out of you is even the way you put it. I suspect you also agree, but I'm trying to force you to agree with me publicly.
I don't know what to agree with. If you're trying to say someday bandwidth caps won't be a problem, I will agree with you.
Yes.
If you're trying to say no one's worried about bandwidth caps right now, I totally disagree with you.
Okay.
And if you're arguing like the people who are worried right now aren't as worried as they used to be and should be worried less soon, I guess maybe it's hard to tell. But there are definitely bandwidth caps, and this definitely is already annoying a lot of people in our chat room. So I feel like you're saying, don't worry, everyone, someday it'll be fine. And I'd rather focus on the current thing, which is, do you like Lamarr, that this won't count against your bandwidth cap, or do you think that is unfair?
Yeah, but I like saying the thing that makes people mad. So I'm trying to figure out.
Here, let me try joining you on that. This is not a net neutrality violation, as it is right now, without thinking about the future at all.
I will agree with that, mainly because
no. I mean, it's not a matter of opinion. If this was still under the open internet guidelines of Tom Wheeler's FCC, before Ajit Pai came in and overturned those guidelines, this would be allowed.
I'll still agree with you. And no matter how hard you try
I'll let you.
to get me to not agree with you, I'm going to keep agreeing with you. My point is, I think that part of the reason this is a soft-sold benefit is because I think in general people are less fired up than they were 10 years ago. That's really my point. Is here's my thesis. 10 years ago, everybody was terrified about bandwidth caps and about traffic shaping and all those things. But now we're in an age where we live with much more abundance of those things. And I'm not saying that there aren't people who have real problems with, internet speeds and wouldn't like more and all those things. You're talking to a broadcast company that's trying, to fix a lot of broken things. But my perception is that the world at large, and by the world I mean America, let's face it, is less worried.
So I have a question, maybe for Tom. I don't know. Who are the people? And maybe this is I'm in a bubble, right? But who are the people that are using up their HBO Max or Netflix data caps on mobile?
I've got children.
Fair question.
They're called parents. The thing you're thinking of, it's parents. People who have
Wi-Fi?
miniature. They're small and they sit in the back of your car. Sometimes
I don't know what these things are. I don't know.
Check the back of your car next time just to make sure.
I mean, you never know. You might have.
I might be in
several.
trouble.
If you see something, you might be in trouble. You're probably fine.
See something, say something. No. I think in general, it's this is a parental thing. I think this is guided and focused and directed at parents, and that's really the beginning and the end of it.
Well, but also there are people who are using their phone connections as their internet, right? That is there's on Daily Tech News Show, we've talked about documented increases in the number of people who say, I only have an internet connection through my phone. And so those people are only getting video through a phone connection, whether it's tethered or not.
Right, and we have two backup connections that are they're wireless ISPs that we rely on. None of them are primary, so I have no doubt that there are people who are in that spot. I guess what I'm wondering is just again, this is all just me waxing nostalgic. Like, remember when we used to be really fired up about data caps and worried that there's only so much internet to go around?
Do you think people aren't fired up about data caps because you're not following the story? Do you think people are not fired up about data caps because, I don't know, there's a virus killing everyone? Or I'm just not getting that part. Like, people are still pretty fired up about this from where I sit.
I think I'm marveling because you're 100% right. It could be that the number's lower because there's certainly other things going on in this world. I think I'm taking a Brian moment to marvel at just how much the volume has been turned down on this specific issue over the last 10 years. Because 10 years ago, you and I were on the Twit Network talking about this kind of stuff, and people were ready to punch other people. And I don't see much of that these days, but it sounds to me like you're seeing a lot more of it in the DTNS crowd.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it is better. Right. And I won't take that away from you, but I don't think it's minimized. I mean, people do get pretty fired up about it, but not to the punching point. I'll go with you that far. There's much less punching about data caps than
we should arrange
I haven't punched anybody yet.
We should have like a 3-way MMA fight over this. Just
ESPN, get on that.
I mean, for us, it'll be ESPN 20 because I don't know who would watch that.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is the kind of thing that, hey, if I want HBO Max, I better get it through AT&T. And if you're bothered by that, it would have been allowed under open internet guidelines before. So it's not a new thing. It's, in fact, why they have their own service was to get around those rules. The rules before said you can zero rate, but you have to make it available to everybody. And that's why I went through that long description of they have it available for others. We can't find out if any others are taking advantage of it, except this one marketing company. But they're trying to play by rules that don't even really exist. They wouldn't even have to do that anymore.
I will say this much, that I was probably unfairly dismissive to somebody out there listening right now who's like, no, this exactly applies to me, and I was really excited about it. I can't believe that you're acting like we live in a magical, abundant age. I'm feeling the restrictiveness of this. Cordkillers@gmail.com. Please.
All right. And also, we're hiring, Brian.
Doggone right, we're hiring.
You're what?
We've got to replace some problematic co-hosts.
We got an email from Jeff. Jeff said, well, I did it. After years and years of watching Going Back to the Twit Days, I finally gave myself a promotion to boss, which only makes sense because I work in the events industry and I'm bored now due to a lack of work. So why not get a job with one of the few folks hiring right now by paying to become a Cordkillers boss?
Real quick, the plug is patreon.com/Cordkillers, just $1 an episode. It makes all the difference in the world. You'll never notice it. It'll keep us in business. Can I confess something, Tom? There's a podcast that I've listened to that over the last year went from a 2-hour experience every single week to you only get the first hour. Everything else is hidden behind a paywall. And I spent a good 6 months figuring out that, you know what, I guess I only wanted the first hour anyway. And then one day I was just bored enough that I made the transition to becoming a boss. And it was awesome. It felt so great.
Is it this podcast?
Yes, I listened to my own podcast.
Oh, excellent.
We weren't letting Brian hear himself for the final hour.
No. There have been shows that I've supported from the beginning, and there have been shows that I listen and enjoy and don't mind the ads for. But only in the last year have I had a show that I really fell in love with, but held off on becoming a boss, and then I did it, and it felt so good. So if you're, a version of that, go ahead and give us money. It's okay. You'll feel good. It'll be right.
Look, Jeff did it. You can too. Patreon.com/Cordkillers. Let's talk about how to watch. Now, we as Cordkillers are interested in when people will go back to the theaters. Why? Because as Cordkillers, what happens with theaters affects when movies will be released to us sitting at home. But also, a lot of us do like to, wander out and see those movies in the theaters as well. So there are the questions of when will people go back to the theaters, as well as will people go back to the theater? So we've been following the indicators. Let's check in. South Korea has been one of the better test cases out there. It has a thriving film industry and a theater-going populace, and its theaters have been open for a while now. So this is a chance to look at, okay, what's a test case look at where people are finally allowed to go back to the theaters. Ticket sales this weekend finally rose in Korea 112%. To just less than half of normal. The Korean Film Council helped us by issuing discount vouchers, which they will continue to do. So they were giving people essentially the equivalent of about $5 off of a theater ticket. So that made the tickets less expensive. And Intruder was the first major film to get a theatrical release in Korea since the virus hit. Before that, it was a lot of re-releases, things from overseas, like American movies that hadn't quite had a full run, stuff like that. Intruder brought in $2.23 million, and there's more where that came from. Coming up in Korea are Innocence on June 2nd, Me and Me on June 18th, and Hashtag Alive on June 24th. So in Korea, we're seeing the tickets are going up. The releases are starting to happen. That first release really brought people back into the theaters. And that is what people are hoping in America, at least people in the theater industry are hoping will happen on July 17th for the worldwide release of Tenet from Christopher Nolan. That is the big date to watch. There's a movie called Unhinged, which will be the first new wide release in the US on July 1st. But Tenet is the first major budget movie hitting theaters July 17th. So everybody's looking at it. And that, of course, will pave the way for Mulan, which is coming to theaters on July 24th, should all go well. So far, everybody's confident. Nobody's moving July 17th, but nobody's promising it yet. In fact, when that trailer hit Fortnite, it just said coming to theaters. It didn't say when. Now, the theaters actually opening is also starting to happen in the US as well. Cinemark is one of the first big chains that will open. We're getting a lot of smaller chains, a lot of indie theaters opening, but Cinemark is expecting phased US reopening. So they'll start in a few markets in June 19th, have a few more the week after that, et cetera, until they hope to have everything open by July 10th. AMC has started reopening their cinemas with 3 theaters in Norway on June 3rd. They say more will come to Norway over the next couple of weeks, with wider European openings to follow. and they have no plan for the U.S. In fact, there's a little nervousness around AMC because in a financial filing, AMC warned that if it cannot reopen by July 17th for Tenet, quote, substantial doubt exists about our ability to continue as a going concern for a reasonable period of time. So what we're looking at is things are looking like you'd want them to be in Korea. We're looking at July 17th for Tenet. The theaters are ready to reopen. They're getting their plans in place for safety precautions and getting the information out there. But nobody's committed to it yet. There's still a little bit of a fingers crossed feeling.
I have thoughts, but I think some of them I've said before. So I'd be much more interested to hear what Lamarr thinks of if you're going to put on your prognostication predictive hat. Number one, what do we think the first major release since all of the pandemic started looks like? And then number two, how fast do we start to feel like things are normal?
Yeah, so I'm looking at again, Tenet being that thing to watch on the 17th of July, and I don't know if me, I'm not going to the theater until 2059 or something. Like
we have already talked about this. You're celebrating all of this. I think you were the dissenter. Tom and I said we would wear spacesuits to go back to the theater, and you're like, I'll never look at one again.
Yeah, I mean, Korea is interesting. Like I mean, it's still half of what it was, but there is some increases. I think that's what's going to happen here. People are going to trickle in. We're seeing a little bit different with bars and restaurants opening. We talked about that before the show. Like those things are getting crowds. But I think the idea of sitting for a couple hours with either a mask on or with it off and you just taking a chance, that might be. I've talked to some people about it. That might just be something that's a little bit hard to handle. When you saw Scoop do well, you saw Trolls do well, and so the thought process is, man, if I just wait a few weeks, I can just kind of have this in my house. That's how I've thought about it. That's how some of my friends thought about it. But I have something more controversial for you.
Good.
Okay.
As a question.
That's what we need.
So why are we as a society so eager for to save this industry where it's destined to go digital at some point? Like, is it nostalgia? Is it jobs? We want to save jobs. Is it why is there a push to make theaters work again when there's I just talked about a couple of films that did really well in digital. Like what is it about theaters besides the obvious, I guess, nostalgia? Here's
what I think it is, and this please, Tom, interrupt and stop me if I get too philosophical. But I think as human beings, for tens of thousands of years, we have gathered around the campfire and told stories. That means one or two people have been the storytellers. The rest of the tribe has been the story listeners, but it has been a communal experience that is magical. There have been various proxies of all of these things over the years. You can't replace it with playing video games at home alone, because that's only somewhat communal, and it has a script and a narrative that's already been written and is on rails or whatever. I think you can get close to it by going to the theater, that kind of thing. But I think this is a purely human need that we have, and I don't think we can stop it. And for now, there's nothing better, more flexible, more cheaply distributed than movies. And I think that is what we're hoping to get back to, and then we'll see where it goes from there.
So there is some nostalgia built in it. I actually, you went deeper than I thought you were going to go. I didn't know you were going to go back to the caveman days. So congratulations.
Hey man, I just watched Devs, so I'm a little bit in my head.
Nostalgia?
Yeah.
Let me give you some nostalgia. Yeah. I don't know why I want to go back to a theater, to be honest, but I do. I miss it. And for me, I think there's, if I had to guess, it's probably just something about the larger than life aspect of it. I don't know if I really like the communal aspect. I don't want to talk to anybody in there. I don't like it when people are making noise or anything. Hold on. Just settle down. I'm making one point. I got to make another, and it's a complex thought. So I need more than 280 characters.
Okay.
So I don't like that aspect, but I do. There is probably something, even if it's subliminal, of sort of the laughter engulfing you, right? And knowing that other people are experiencing what you were talking about, Brian, that sort of like caveman experience of hearing the story, all of us together. But I can't really put my finger on whether that's it or not. But the other day we were driving back from taking our dog to the vet, and I saw the ArcLight Theater that I always used to go to, and I was like, man, I really want to go there. I really like. It was just an unbidden thought. Like I miss it.
I can agree with you on that. I remember the last magical movie was Avengers Endgame. I don't know if you were there for the premiere, but it was at the LA Convention Center, and that was just like, it was just magnanimous, and so yeah, that was an experience. I would have enjoyed the movie at home too, and I have enjoyed it at home. But being there, it was special. But that was like a special, iconic event for everyday movies that are coming out, like a Tenet. Like, I've seen a trailer, it looks great, Christopher Nolan, but it's like, is that going to drive me out of my house? Even pre-pandemic, I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
It's one that's like, it'll be out in 2 months on digital, and I just, because the windows are shortened now. So it's not going to get me out. I don't know what it'll do for everybody else.
So, and I agree. I think this will be a middling release. I think it's going to take some time to ramp up, and this is sort of a sacrificial lamb of like, well, let's at least get started. Here we go.
Right.
But I think what we're all craving, for me, Rocky IV was unreal. That moment, like, I got so caught up. There was a moment that the whole theater stood up and cheered and clapped when he punched that steroid using Russian right in the face or whatever. Every movie is a scratch off lottery ticket, and we're all addicted to the possibility that moment might be waiting around the corner of this next movie. And Avengers Endgame is an awesome example of it. Because yes, we all know this will not be Avengers Endgame, but we're also a little bit addicted to the possibility it might be, because for every Avengers Endgame that we knew was going to be a slam dunk, we've had those surprise, I just had my mind blown movies, and nobody saw this coming. On the advice of Jeff Kanata, seeing Split, not knowing what it was about or anything, was one of the most wonderful, magical experiences. And you felt it through the entire theater when a thing was revealed at the end. We're all addicted to that, and I don't see that addiction going away anytime soon.
You all explained it way better than I would have imagined. So thank you. Yeah.
Well, and I think that your point of view on it is not uncommon. Like, there's a lot of people who are like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Not for me, right? I'm still just going to wait for it to come home. If to that aspect, I would say that maybe something that will draw even some of those people like you, who are saying, well, I'd rather watch it at home, is the fact that you can't be interrupted. Like, there is something to the experience of going to a theater, which is you won't get up to go to the bathroom unless you really have to, right? You won't get interrupted by a phone call. You won't get distracted of like, well, let me put this on pause and look up something. Like, there's something about that.
I did that for school. Yeah.
Exactly. There's something about that sometimes that's cooler to be able to do that, but there's something special I think it's even more special now because we are more likely to be interrupted at home than ever before by our own thoughts, if nothing else.
Maybe think of it a little bit like a roller coaster ride or a theme park experience. Like, one of the none of us love having a giant thing lock us into place, but it's a commitment device that defines what our experience is like, it's beginning now and there's no getting off until it's over. And I think that is a more thrilling experience. Movies don't always pull that off, but when they do, pretty great experience.
I even like going to the theater to see bad movies. Not meaning I go and I know the movie's bad, but even when I've gone to the movie theater and the movie's been bad, I will come out of it going like, well, but at least I got to see it in a theater, right? That feels like a compensation.
You did go see Cats then? Okay.
I didn't, but I saw Ad Astra.
Oh my God, Ad Astra just kept on going. But I'm with you, Tom. Where it's like at the end of the day, I know I'm going to be able to sit comfortably, get through 2, maybe 2.5 beers, have a hamburger, and my kids won't. Like nobody's allowed to bug me. Like it's pretty great.
Kind of great.
So who's first? Who's first going? You or Brian?
Brian.
Who's gonna do it first?
That's up to Eileen and Bonnie.
I know.
No!
I think that's
You can't throw
exactly
it off
what
on
he's
the wires.
asking: is who's going to break first, Eileen or Bonnie? And let me make my prediction. Bonnie has 3 daughters, so if I were to predict who's going to break first, it would be on our end.
No, and all kidding aside, it is a joint decision for us, and we were talking about it this weekend. And I'm a little more on the fence for Tenet, but we're both kind of ready. We think we might be ready for Mulan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Oh, I wonder how much Tenet, totally different production company, right? Like there's no way that there's like an intentional hey, let's make sure to send this movie out to break the seal so that Mulan can be more of a success. Do you think there's any of that game theory happening?
They may have talked. You don't think they?
Yeah, I would imagine there's some kind of horse trading that happens, right?
Yeah, I think Christopher Nolan wants to be. It sounds from all the interviews that he wants to be the guy to brave the way through. I don't think it's a. I wouldn't characterize it the way you're saying. It was on the schedule. Somebody had to go first, and it sounds to me like Nolan said, "Yeah, no, it'll be me. I'll stick to it." And it's a great movie for that because it's safe. It's going to make most of its money on demand anyway, because it was never going to bring in a lot of money from the theater.
Right.
So they can afford to risk it more than you don't want them to have Mulan be the first one back. That's for sure.
Yes.
All right, let's talk about what to watch in Under Surveillance.
Not like real estate. It's all about location.
Under Surveillance.
HBO released a trailer for Lovecraft Country coming in August. It's based on the book of the same name, which tells the story of a black family in the 1950s crossing the country to investigate its own history in an area associated with Lovecraftian rumors.
Very cool. I think when we talked about this before, they had some interesting takes on handling the problematic racial motifs in the Lovecraft universe. Am I remembering that right?
I read the book for Sword and Laser, and the book confronts it head on.
Yeah.
It's meant to shine the light on the problematic nature of Lovecraft and his mythology, for sure.
But while also featuring badass squid monsters and all that stuff.
I mean,
I'm actually
not
interested.
going to enjoy it.
I'm really interested in this. I mean, the timing, of course, with everything happening is notable. But I was reading about this, like, wow, it was notable that the person was not only black in the 50s, but into sci-fi. So it's like, that first black nerd, that was definitely a problematic thing. You get laughed at for liking sci-fi. I mean, even in the 80s, I was laughed at for being in the Star Trek. The reruns or whatever. So
sure.
So yeah. So coming from that angle, it got me hooked. If it was just one of those, okay, another historical movie about all the troubles that it's like I've been there, seen it. I've seen Roots. Like I'm good. But
I've seen Roots. I'm good.
I'm just saying. But this is having some sci-fi angles. I'm interested in it now.
This is kind of Green Book meets Roots with Lovecraftian monsters in the 50s.
Those sound like three awesome things.
Yeah. I'm in. I'm going to watch it.
Amazon will stream 4 English Premier League games this summer for all viewers, whether they have a Prime subscription or not. These are games that would have otherwise not been televised, but Premier League is happening without fans in the stands, like so many sports leagues. So there have been a lot of arrangements made to try to get those games in front of people, and Premier League will resume on June 17th.
I don't want to go back to things we've already talked about, but on sports, we talked a little bit on Night Attack Happy Hour about how you solve the problem of the social proof, the excitement, the energy of the crowd, that kind of stuff. I kind of wouldn't mind if they just said, hey, by the way, there's no crowd there, but we're going to play crowd noises because
Did you
it's
watch
better
the
that way.
Bundesliga this weekend? Because they did that.
Did they really? That's awesome.
Yep.
Oh, that's
They
fantastic.
absolutely did.
That's awesome. Good.
So the NBA is also going to be testing. I hope this is more a rumor or whatever, because it sounds silly, but they're going to be using the NBA 2K game, the crowd noise from that into the game.
Oh, really?
And
That's fine with me, man. I'm so okay with that.
I think that's good for I guess it's good for us, like the players that, I don't know, because they drive on excitement too. It's like, it's going to feel like a pickup game to them if they don't have the crowd involved. So maybe some noises for them would be kind of cool.
Well, there was I think, I'm so sorry that I can't remember what program I say what on, but there was a Radio Lab talking about the sound engineering that goes into stuff like the Olympics. For example, if you're watching somebody rowing, there's no way with helicopters and crowds shouting and but you need to hear that sound of an oar hitting the water. So it's all foliage. It's all manufactured in the moment. So it's like, let's put that on Front Street. Let's just say, yeah, look, we know what it is, but we want it to feel awesome. Let's go.
The Korean baseball organization has been playing their season now for more than a month without fans, but they have the cheerleaders there, and that's a traditional Korean thing. They have cheer. When I say cheerleaders too, I mean like they are literally people who lead fans in cheers. They're not just like a group of people with pom poms. So they're out there making the noise, right, and providing a little bit of that feeling that you would get, and it's surprisingly effective, even though it's not the huge crowd noise that you would normally have.
I don't blame anyone who thinks it's silly, but I genuinely believe it's important, and I'm down for it.
That story that he just popped up with the plushies in the stands, that is the best thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, Korea also getting inventive on how to fill out the stands. Some cardboard cutouts, some plushies. It's all good. Also, we're not going to have anything to watch if people don't start making stuff again, and that's happening. Production resumed on the film Poppy in New Zealand on Friday. It's the first local film to restart. We talked about how the Avatar production crew is there, but they have to go through a 14-day quarantine, so they're about a week through that now. New Zealand has a production protocol in place that everyone has to follow to begin production, but they announced today that New Zealand has eliminated almost all of its restrictions because it's gone 12 days without a reported COVID-19 infection. And there is, in fact, no active cases in New Zealand as of this point. So we may be getting a lot of stuff out of New Zealand. California has authorized production to resume on June 12th. Those productions have to get sign off from county public health officials. So it won't happen in every county in California, but that's also underway.
BRB moving to New Zealand.
I'm proud of them. Like they did what they had to do, and now it's gone pretty much. Yeah. Until we start visiting.
And because of their effectiveness in fighting this virus, all future movies will be Avatar.
Yes. I'm okay with this.
All right. Cool. Just checking. Yes, no, New Zealand is a pretty impressive in the way that they have handled it, at least certainly in the results from the way they've handled it. All right, let's talk about what we've had our eyes on. Lamarr, what's something you've been watching lately?
So I wasn't here last week for the HBO Max thing, but that was the greatest thing ever to come out in the history of mankind for me. And I've been spending my time watching the Flintstones.
What?
So I've watched Princess Mononoke and some of the Studio Ghibli things. I haven't watched those before. But at night, because what was fascinating to me about the Flintstones is that I didn't realize all this time that they had a laugh track. Especially in the earlier episodes, it was like a really bad one too.
Yeah.
And so I looked up about laugh tracks, and I was like, wow, they were actually pretty expensive to make. They were like a production to make them. So Hanna-Barbera gradually eased them off. So in later Flintstone things, I'm hearing less and less. But right in the beginning, it was just fascinating. So I in my night watching the Flintstones, and I don't know why it's so good, but it is. It's great. So I'm spending $15 a month to watch the Flintstones.
That's an example of one of the things I didn't expect out of HBO Max is the number of people who are diving into the catalog for stuff like Flintstones or Looney Tunes or things like that.
Yeah. I love the catalog, man. And especially the TCM Turner Classic Movies ones. Sure. I've never seen, don't get mad at me, guys. I've never seen Casablanca. So
I still haven't seen it.
I'm just jealous that you get to experience it for the first time. It's my favorite movie.
Oh yeah, you remember you told me that. Yeah, so I'm gonna watch that hopefully this week, and just all those classic movies. I just haven't. I want to just dive all into them. Let's take a month off. Yeah, not coming back here till September.
Report back in a month. Yeah.
Man, I've not been watching a lot, but I just want to give a quick tip of the hat to an audio program, Wind of Change. It's Spotify's making a big play to dominate podcasting, so they're doing a bunch of originals, and this one is about the unlikely thesis that the Scorpions song "Wind of Change" was written and paid for by the CIA as part of a campaign. And I'm only 2 episodes in. It gets silly, but then it reminds you of the real stuff the CIA has tried in the past, and then it sounds less silly. And then you listen to some Scorpions, and then you're back to the CIA crazy ops. I'm really enjoying it.
What is this on again?
It's a Spotify exclusive, but it's a podcast. It's called Wind of Change.
Gotcha. I'm gonna write that down.
I want to put in a good word for Joy of Life, which I've been watching on Viki. It's a Chinese wuxia. Wuxia is the martial arts stories, and this one's not a fantasy one. This isn't, the gods in heaven and superpowers and anything like that. This is just, if you know Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, that is probably the most common example that U.S. folks have of wuxia, and it's like that. It's funny. It's got a modern sensibility. And the fighting scenes are great. So if you're just looking for like a good martial arts watch, it's subtitled, which I know that throws it out for some people. But if you can handle subtitles and you want a good martial arts series, it's about 46 episodes long, called Joy of Life on Viki. Bryce, what should we be on the lookout for?
Hey, if you're looking for something fun, we got a pick from Ian. Ian writes, Cord-killing extraordinaires. I wanted to share my current favorite show, Taskmaster. It's a British comedy panel show where 5 comedians compete in a range of tasks given to them by the Taskmaster, ranging from eating the most watermelon to painting a picture in the dark or making the biggest mess. It sounds simple, but it's truly hilarious. It's got a 9 out of 10 on IMDb and a 100% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. There are currently 9 seasons in the UK, but I discovered that their new YouTube channel has been releasing 1 episode per week and is on series 5. Actually, looking at it today, it looks like it's on series 6, so even more so far. With the current COVID stay-at-home orders, they've also been creating a home tasking game where fans are given a task and the best ones are aired on the YouTube channel. It is a bright spot in the current non-socializing world. Ian from Florida. Thank you, Ian. Yeah, there is nowhere to stream this on the US, including what seems to have been a possibly short-lived US adaptation of Taskmaster, but now many of the full episodes are now on YouTube. If you just search Taskmaster, that's all one word, and that's where they've got a full episode streaming there. So if you've got something we should be on the lookout, email it to us, cordkillers@gmail.com.
This is a brilliant idea. Are you kidding
that kid
me?
Catching the arrow.
Yeah,
I
right?
know. I want to see this. I want to see this on YouTube for sure.
Hey, folks, if you are working from home, you are one of a lot of people right now. And I've been doing this for 10 years or so. Patrick Beja, a friend of mine, has been doing that for more than 10 years. So we got together and started a new podcast called Work in Sanity, just sharing our tips and experiences from working from home with you. If you're looking for, somebody to hear chat about all the challenges of working from home, check it out at workinsanity.net.
Oh, but while you're working from home, you've got to be using some kind of computer, don't you? Why don't you get yourself a Doghouse system? Look, you've got to upgrade your computer at some point. So head on over to doghousesystems.com/V/rogue. That's ROGUE. Use promo code ROGUE at checkout. We'll get credit for the sale. These are the folks who have provided all of the equipment that have made this entire experience possible. Thank you to our friends.
Let's move on to the front lines.
Front lines!
Quibi executives have agreed to take a 10% pay cut, quote, because it's the right thing to do. According to a memo from Jeff Katzenberg and Meg Whitman, the co-executives, they said the company is in a good financial position and is, quote, not laying off staff as a part of cost-saving measures. In fact, the company has added a dozen new Quibi employees and renewed several shows. Brian?
And it's totally unrelated that 10 is the maximum number of minutes for each Quibi. That's right, a Quibi is a quick bite.
12.
You don't have the time, and we don't have the money. We're Quibi.
So, Lamarr, you're watching a lot of Quibi, right?
Not at all.
I love that golden arm, man.
I have a friend. I have a friend who has a show. I pop in but I love him. But Quibi can go, and I would not cry a tear for them.
But well, at least we can all agree that having all of your executives take a 10% pay cut is perfectly normal.
Well, it's certainly what the most successful, popular. Nielsen estimates that streaming is staying higher than it was pre-lockdown despite the lifting of restrictions. Connected TV includes game consoles, I don't know what Rooks is, smart TVs,
Roku's.
Oh, Roku's, there we go. March 2, Nielsen estimated 2.7 billion hours of viewing on connected devices. That peaked at 3.9 billion for 2 weeks from March 23rd through April 5th. As lockdowns were eased, the hours fell, but not by much. We're still watching a lot of shows. The week ending May 10th still had 3.5 billion hours viewed. Nielsen said traditional live TV usage in early May was only marginally higher than in 2019. That does surprise me a little bit.
Yeah, people got used to it. Good.
Yeah, and turned to it. Right, not turning to traditional TV and increasing that, but turning to streaming and getting used to it. Like I said, Roku has added a program guide grid to its Roku channel app, which shows what's streaming at the moment on the 130 viewing options in the Roku channel app. The options include several live news streams. It's basically, if you've seen Zumo or you've seen Pluto, Roku channel has a version of that. And they've now added a grid to be able to see all of that stuff at once. Roku channel also offers on-demand programming. Some of that's free with ads. Some of it's premium offerings like Stars, BET Plus, Acorn TV, and such. But this grid is for that free streaming on demand, Pluto TV like stuff.
And the Next Web reviews a Chrome extension called TV Chart that adds IMDb ratings to your Netflix account. A graph button is added to titles that you could click on to get IMDb ratings. It can even show episode specific ratings. I maybe just being like a number file. I love all of this, the metrics. I want to know what everybody else thinks of everything.
I don't care about people.
Well, the Next Web that created this was the article that wrote about this was frustrated with the Netflix recommendations they get, and we're looking at this as an alternative to that. If you're just looking for recommendations, so I don't know. XDA developers obtained renders of something that may be Google's upcoming Android TV stick, codenamed Sabrina. We've talked about this before. The renders come from pre-release firmware provided by an XDA-recognized developer called Deadman96385. The device in the video is oblong, shown in black, white, and pink. The top half of the remote shows a control wheel, a mute button, and a Google Assistant button, among others. Screenshots of the interface show large tiles for shows and a grid for YouTube TV, which presumably would be built in. Firmware also indicates support for Dolby Vision. This is basically the alternative to the Chromecast, whereas the Chromecast, you have to have a mobile device to control it. This will be like a Chromecast, but with Android TV so that you could use a remote to control it.
And if only they made something like this before, that was a box that had their name on it that did the same function that survived. That'd be cool.
See what you're doing.
Totally. Yeah. No, I'm going to pull out my old Google TV from Logitech when this comes out and compare and contrast. Yeah.
You still have yours? Oh my God.
It's in a closet over there. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
A collector's item.
Tom, should we check the dispatches from the front?
I mean, if you want, sure. Matthew wrote in and said, love the show, guys. Listening in Derby, UK, or is it Derby, UK? I am blind and have been doing the online watch party thing for a very long time with other blind people. We have a bit of a novel solution to this. As none of us can see the images, we gather together on a voice over IP program called Team Talk, which lets transmission of stereo audio happen, and one of us pipes the audio track with the audio description into the conference, and then we all listen together like this. As an example, Netflix recently added audio descriptions to Breaking Bad, so a few of us have been watching it together like this for the past couple of weeks. I have personally been doing this for at least 10 years now, but totally understand that this is a niche thing. I would love this to catch on, but But I agree with Tom. I think it's a novelty that will wear off for most.
I don't know that it will be a novelty that will wear off. I'm really astonished. We've got some fans of not only the podcast, but also of like Scam School, Scam Nation. We've had people come out to the bars who are like, "Hi, I'm blind. I love your show. I watch it all the time." And I'm like, "I'm doing visual magic." And he's like, "Yeah, but sometimes it's not visual." But I certainly enjoy the show. Like,
well, I don't
this
think Matthew's
wonderful.
saying it'll wear off for his group. I think he's saying other people who haven't been doing it for 10 years like he has for different reasons it might wear off.
No, well, in which I'll also back up my play where it's like I think is something instinctual of us all gathering around the fire to hear stories.
Yeah.
I think that's what's going on.
Do you remember the Xbox 360 had and Netflix collaborated and had that Netflix? That was the most amazing thing to sync up and watch a movie with people. I know that people do it on Discord now with Rabbit or whatever it's called. But I think what you're saying, Brian, is true. There is a nice thing to be able to get together with friends and watch something. So watch parties are definitely not going to go away. I think it hit at the right time with people. I think Netflix was too early. I think this is the right time for it. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Well, Anonymous wrote in about this too, said you guys were talking about the Watch Party add-ons and features coming to streaming service, and you seemed pretty cold on it. I've never used one either. However, I work for a school with a one-to-one laptop program. About a week after the school went into quarantine, we got email requests from dozens of students asking for us to allow the Netflix Watch Party extension on their laptops. Teenagers who aren't allowed to leave the house but still want to watch movies and shows with their friends and not their parents might be a pretty big audience for this kind of service, at least at the moment.
Olergard writes in saying, in response to Brian's question about why anyone would pick just HBO instead of HBO Max when they load the app, there seems to be some confusion among people who don't listen to Cordkillers about what HBO Max even is and how much it costs. So some people may just pick, do the thing that's the same thing as I have right now. He also goes on to say he really enjoyed how sad Brian was that the transition was painless, so much so that he went and watched it again on the YouTube video.
Brian signed up for HBO Max Live on the show last week, Lamarr.
Yeah.
And he was expecting it to go badly, and it didn't.
And it did not go badly. I love it.
Ed Ross has responded to your question, Brian, about what the difference between Channel 4 and BBC 4 is. He says, hello, and this is an abridged version. He gave us a full rundown of everything, but this is the shortened version. Ed wrote, here is what Channel 4 is and isn't in the UK. What is Channel 4? Channel 4 is the station you get if you press the 4 button on a remote control.
I'm with you so far.
Channel 4.
Okay.
BBC 4 is not Channel 4. BBC 4 is a BBC TV channel. ITV4 is not Channel 4. It is an ITV TV channel. And ITV 3+1, although 3+1 equals 4, ITV 3+1 just shows what was on ITV 3 1 hour later and is also not Channel 4. All the best, Ed.
Crystal clear. Thank you very much, Ed. It all makes sense now. Man, I was blind, but now I can see.
I don't understand. How could we possibly have been confused?
Sheesh.
Most importantly, if I want to see more of your beautiful face, Lamarr Wilson, where should I go?
Oh man, so yeah, you can check me out on YouTube. I do tech and gaming, primarily more gaming. So yeah, check me out on youtube.com/Lamarr Wilson. We'll be starting to working on a series for something for Instagram for IGTV too. So you can follow me there at Lamarr Wilson on Instagram if you'd like to.
Are you going to play The Last of Us Part 2?
Oh yes.
Okay. Because we spent 6 hours with my 12-year-old watching the entire playthrough of the game just so I can force her to watch 40 hours of her dad crying constantly playing it.
Yeah, I played the remastered version on the PS4 and I loved it. Loved it. So yeah, I'm still waiting for it. Yeah.
Our website is cordkillers.com. Our email address is cordkillers@gmail.com. We're live on twitch.tv/9attack, which is also carried on diamondclub.tv Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. Thanks again, Lamarr. We'll see you all next week.
Hey, Tom Merritt.
Yes, Brian Brushwood.
Know who I love even more than my own children?
Your other children?
No, not my wife. I know what you're saying. I love our $5 patrons. These are the people that keep us loud, live, and independent. Thank you so much, $5 patrons.
You know what? I love them more than not life itself, because then I'd be dead and I couldn't appreciate them, but really, really, really close. And I'm so thankful that they are here to make this show happen.
Thank you so much to all of our $5 a month patrons. You guys are wizards. You're champions.
Thank you, everyone.
You're heroes.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.